My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 27 years old, and until 3 months ago, I believed I understood the rules of my own relationship. Not the dramatic rules people post about online, just the quiet ones you learn by repetition. Who texts first? Who remembers birthdays? Who says I'm home, even when they're not really home yet? The kind of rules that settle into your bones without you noticing until one day they're gone. I'd been with Evan for 2 years. We met at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. Cheap folding chairs, paper plates bending under potato salad, someone's speaker struggling through a summer playlist. Evan stood off to the side, half smiling, beer untouched in his hand. He wasn't loud. He wasn't trying. That was the thing about him. He never seemed to try, and somehow that made people lean in. Within 6 months, we were practically living together. Not officially, not with a conversation. Just toothbrushes multiplying in each other's bathrooms. Extra hoodies at my place. His spare key showing up on my ring without ceremony. Evan worked in commercial real estate. Long hours, clean suits, a voice that knew how to sound confident on the phone even when he wasn't sure. I worked in operations, schedules, systems, the invisible scaffolding that keeps everything from collapsing. Boring to explain, comforting to live with. Our life had a rhythm that felt earned. Sunday brunch at the same place down the street. Wednesday movie nights. My pick one week, his the next. Weekend trips to his parents' lake house where mornings smelled like coffee and pine and no one asked too many questions. It felt safe. It felt chosen. Then, sometime around February, the rhythm stuttered. It wasn't one big thing. It never is. It was small delays that stacked on top of each other until they felt heavy. Evan started working later. Texts that used to come fast now took hours. Plans shifted last minute. When I asked if I could come by, he'd sigh, not loudly, not cruelly, but enough that I felt it. "I'm exhausted," he'd say. "I already told people I'd stay in tonight. Can we do this another day?" I told myself not to read into it. Everyone gets busy. Everyone needs space. But space feels different when it's requested, and different when it's enforced. I'll admit it. I didn't handle the distance well. I started sending more messages, not dramatic ones, not accusations, just attempts, suggestions, questions dressed up as casual. "Want to grab dinner this week? What about Thursday? I could swing by after work if you're still up." Each unanswered message sat heavier than the last. I could feel myself tipping into something I didn't recognize, watching my phone too closely, checking timestamps, replaying tone. I hated that version of myself, but I hated not knowing even more. One night in early March, I brought takeout to Evan's apartment. Thai food, his favorite. The kind with extra sauce that stains the containers orange if you don't eat it fast enough. He was at his desk, laptop open, headphones on. Didn't look up when I walked in. "Hey," I said. He lifted one ear cup. "Hey." I set the food down between us like a peace offering. "Thought we could watch something," I said. "Together." He closed his laptop slowly, not annoyed, measured. "Can we talk?" he asked. Something in his tone made my stomach dip. "Sure," I said, sitting down. He took a breath, then another, like he'd practiced this. "You've been a lot lately," he said carefully. "The constant texting, asking where I am, wanting to meet up every other day." Every other day. I let that land without correcting it. "It's suffocating," he continued. The word hit harder than I expected. "I just miss you," I said. "We barely see each other anymore." "That's because I need space," he replied, firmer now, "and you're not giving it to me." I could feel myself shrinking, just a little. "So here's what's going to happen," he said, leaning back in his chair. "From now on, I'll decide when we meet. Stop pressuring me. I'll reach out when I'm ready." There it was, a rule I hadn't agreed to, delivered like a solution. I wanted to argue, to say relationships aren't schedules controlled by one person, that wanting time with your partner isn't pressure, it's the point. But I also didn't want to lose him. So I did the thing I'm still trying to forgive myself for. I nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll wait." Something softened in his face. Relief, maybe. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," he said. "I just need some breathing room." I told myself that was reasonable, that love sometimes means stepping back. That night was March 8th. I remember because it was my sister's birthday, and I'd left her party early to bring Evan dinner. The first few days of silence weren't unbearable. I filled the space aggressively. Gym after work, drinks with coworkers I'd been postponing. I buried myself in a big project, told myself productivity was healing. But silence doesn't stay quiet. By day 5, it started echoing. No good morning texts, no half-finished jokes, no random links sent at midnight. I checked his social media. I told myself it was harmless. Just curiosity. He was still posting. Coffee cups, his desk, a sunset from somewhere downtown. Normal life, unfolding without me. By day 10, I wasn't sleeping. I drafted messages and deleted them, over and over. 50 versions of the same thought, none of them good enough to send without breaking the rule he'd set. Don't pressure me. My friend tried to tell me the truth gently. He's done, she said. He just doesn't want to be the bad guy. I wasn't ready to hear that. Not yet. Day 14 came quietly. I got home from work, loosened my shoes, poured a drink I didn't really want. It was already dark outside. The apartment felt too still. Then I heard it, a soft knock at the door. My heart jumped before my brain could catch up. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there he was. Evan stood in the hallway, eyes red, face drawn tight like he'd been holding something back for a long time. In his hands was a white plastic bag from a pharmacy. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence he'd asked for had followed him right to my door. For a second, I didn't move. Evan stood there like he wasn't sure he was allowed to exist in my doorway anymore. The pharmacy bag crinkled softly in his hands, the sound too loud in the quiet hall. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been practicing something and failed every time. I stepped aside without answering. He walked past me, slower than usual, as if the apartment might reject him. He set the bag on my kitchen counter, right next to the keys I'd stopped carrying because I didn't need to go anywhere lately. We stood there, not touching, not sitting. "What's going on?" I asked. He didn't look at me right away. He ran a hand through his hair, paced once, then stopped with his back to the window. "I didn't plan this," he said. "I swear I didn't." A warning flickered in my chest, not fear, recognition. "Didn't plan what?" I asked. He turned around then, and I saw it. Real panic. The kind that leaks through even controlled people. "There's someone else," he said. The words landed without sound, like something breaking underwater. I waited. I didn't help him. I didn't fill the silence the way I used to. "She's pregnant," he added. I felt the room tilt slightly, just enough to throw my balance off. "Who?" I asked. He swallowed, hard. "A woman I work with," he said. "Her name is Marissa." The name meant nothing to me. That was almost worse. I leaned back against the counter, my fingers curling around the edge. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. "Long enough." "Since January," he said quietly. January. The late nights. The sudden exhaustion. The need for space. All of it rearranged itself into something sharp and ugly. "You said it only happened once," I said, not accusing, just checking the lie. He nodded too fast. "It did. I mean, we went out after a client meeting. Drinks got out of hand. I was confused. We were already off." We were off. I stared at him, at the man who told me to wait patiently while he untangled someone else's life from his. "And the tests?" I asked. He nodded toward the bag. 3, all positive. I pictured them lined up on a bathroom counter I'd never seen. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked. I didn't know how, he said. I thought maybe I could figure it out first. Figure what out? Whether she'd keep it. Whether I'd stay. Which life was easier to walk back into. I let the silence stretch until he shifted uncomfortably. "So that's it," I said finally. "That's why you needed space." He flinched. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he said. "I just didn't know how to end things without blowing everything up." I nodded once. I looked at the bag on the counter, then back at him. "You should leave," I said. He opened his mouth, closed it again. "Please," he said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just stepped back toward the door and held it open. He stood there for a moment, like he was waiting for me to soften. I didn't. He picked up the bag and walked past me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch replaying every conversation from the past 2 months. Every time I'd apologized for asking to see my own boyfriend. Every time I'd wondered if I was too much. The next morning I called in sick to work. And then I did something I'm not proud of. I started looking. Old texts, social media, tagged photos, anything that would explain how long I'd been standing outside a story I thought I was in. That's when I found Marissa's profile. Designer, early 30s, clean aesthetic. Her feed was full of galleries, mood boards, black and white shots of strangers looking important. 2 weeks ago, there was a photo from an art opening. Evan stood in the background, slightly out of focus, too close to her to be an accident. The caption read, "Inspiring night with inspiring people." I scrolled through the comments. Most were harmless. Then I saw one that made my chest tighten. A woman named Hannah had written, "Didn't know you were back on the scene. Thought you and Evan were still figuring things out." I clicked her profile. Photos of her and Evan stopped around December. No breakup announcement, no closure, just silence. I took screenshots of everything, because suddenly, I wasn't the only one who'd been asked to wait. The screenshots sat on my phone like a second heartbeat. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. Not my friends, not my sister. I wasn't ready for their reactions yet. Sympathy would feel too loud. Anger would feel borrowed. I needed to understand the shape of the lie before I let anyone else touch it. 3 days passed. On the 4th, Evan texted me, "Can we talk just once? I owe you that." I stared at the message longer than I should have. Not because I wanted him back, because I wanted to hear how he would tell it now, what he'd keep, what he'd edit, what he'd still pretend was accidental. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office. Neutral ground, public, daylight. He was already there when I arrived, sitting rigidly at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup he hadn't touched. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him. Dark circles, jaw tight, shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. I sat down across from him. He didn't smile. "I'm not here to fight," he said immediately. "I just want to be honest." I nodded once. "Go ahead." He exhaled slowly, as if that gave him permission. "Marissa is keeping the baby," he said. The sentence landed with a dull thud. Not shock this time, confirmation. "She told me last week," he continued. "I asked for time to think, to process." "To decide," I said. He winced. "Yes." I watched him closely now. The pauses, the way his eyes flicked away when he got close to something real. "She doesn't want me involved," he said. "Not really. She says she does, but I know what that means. Lawyers, paternity tests, everything becoming public." "Is the baby yours?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yes," he said. "She took another test. It's mine." There it was, the thing he hadn't said the night he stood in my doorway. I waited, let the silence do the work. "I didn't plan for any of this," he said again. "I never meant for it to overlap." "Overlap implies accident," I said quietly. January wasn't an accident. His mouth tightened. "I was confused," he said. "You and I were already drifting." "We were drifting because you were somewhere else," I replied. Not angry, precise. He looked down at his hands. "I didn't know how to end things," he admitted. "I didn't want to hurt you. So you controlled the distance instead," I said. "You told me when I was allowed to exist in your life." He didn't answer that. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. Turned the screen toward him. The photo from the gallery. The comment. Hannah's name. His face drained of color. "You saw that," he said. "I saw more," I replied. "December, before Marissa. You didn't end things with her either, did you?" He closed his eyes. "No," he said. "I thought we were taking space." The same phrase, used everywhere, on everyone. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You told me to wait while you were with Marissa. You told Hannah you needed time while you were with both of us. And now you're telling Marissa you're overwhelmed while she's pregnant." He looked up then, really looked at me. "It sounds bad when you say it like that," he muttered. "It sounds accurate," I replied. He leaned back, defeated. "I didn't mean to juggle anything. I just kept thinking I'd fix it before it blew up." "That's not fixing," I said. "That's postponing consequences." He was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted to tell you because I didn't want you hearing it from someone else," he said. "I owed you the truth." "No," I said gently. "You owed me honesty months ago. This is damage control." He flinched. "I'm not asking you to take me back," he said quickly. "I know that's over. I needed you to know everything." "Do you?" I asked. "Or did you need to feel less guilty?" That one landed. He swallowed. "Maybe both." I stood up. "I'm glad you told me," I said. "And I meant it. But we're done here." He looked up at me, something like fear crossing his face. "You don't hate me?" he asked. "No," I said. "That would require energy I'm done giving you." I walked out before he could say anything else. 2 weeks later, I got a message request on Instagram. From Hannah. "Hi, I know this is strange, but I think we need to talk about Evan." I stared at the screen, my pulse steady this time. Because I already knew, and I already understood what kind of man he was. I didn't answer Hannah right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to choose the moment. For once, I didn't want to react. I wanted to respond. I reread her message a few times. It was polite, careful, not accusatory. That alone told me she wasn't reaching out to fight for him. She was reaching out because something had cracked. "I think we need to talk about Evan," I replied an hour later. "I agree." We met that evening at a wine bar halfway between our neighborhoods. Low light, soft music, the kind of place people choose when they want to talk without being overheard. Hannah was already there when I arrived. She stood when she saw me, hesitated, then sat back down, unsure of the etiquette of this situation. She looked tired, not messy tired, controlled tired, like someone who'd been holding herself together for too long. "Thank you for coming," she said. Thank you for reaching out, I replied. We ordered drinks we barely touched. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she exhaled sharply. I didn't know about you, she said. Not really. He told me you two were fading out. I nodded. He told me you were in the past. She laughed once, no humor in it. He told me he needed space, she said. That he was overwhelmed. That he didn't want to hurt me. The words felt familiar. Too familiar. When did he say that? I asked. January, she replied. The same month. Again. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. Messages, dates, voice notes. I didn't need to read them all. The pattern was already clear. He said he loved me, she said quietly. Said he just needed time to figure things out. I met her eyes. He said the same thing to me. That was the moment something shifted. Not bonding, not comfort. Recognition. So Marissa, she began, is pregnant, I finished. And he didn't tell either of us until it became unavoidable. Hannah closed her eyes. Of course. We sat with that truth for a moment. He called me in a panic, she said. After she told him. Confessed everything. Said it was a one-time mistake. That she came on to him. That he was drunk. I almost smiled. Same script, I said. Just different audience. She let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. I feel stupid, she said. So did I replied. But we weren't careless. We were managed. That landed. Hannah straightened a little. I don't want revenge, she said. But I'm not going to protect him either. What does that look like? I asked. She hesitated, then smiled, not kindly. He has a showcase next month, she said. Big one. Gallery owners, investors, people who matter to him. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. We finished our drinks in near silence. Not awkward, resolved. At the door, she paused. I'm sorry he did this to you, she said. I'm sorry he did it to both of us, I replied. We went our separate ways. I didn't feel relief. I felt clarity, and that was enough. I didn't hear from Evan again. Not after the coffee shop. Not after Hannah reached out. Not even after whatever conversation he must have had with Marissa when the reality of everything finally settled in. The silence this time felt different. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't waiting. It was absence. A week later, Hannah texted me. He's spiraling, she wrote, calling everyone, trying to manage the damage. That sounded like him. Evan had always believed that if he moved fast enough, talked enough, explained enough, he could keep things from collapsing. He mistook motion for accountability, noise for effort. I pictured him pacing his apartment, phone in hand, rehearsing apologies that never landed where they were meant to. I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was only one line. I'm done being part of his cleanup. That was the first time I said it out loud, even to myself. 2 days later, he showed up at my office building. I didn't see him at first. I was walking out for lunch when I heard my name. Clara. I turned. He stood near the entrance, hands shoved into his coat pockets, eyes searching my face like he was looking for permission to speak. You can't be here, I said calmly. I just need 5 minutes, he replied. Please. I glanced around. People were watching. Colleagues, strangers, witnesses. Talk, I said. You have one. His shoulders sagged with relief, mistaking access for hope. Marissa's talking to lawyers, he said. She wants everything formalized. Paternity, support. I didn't think it would move this fast. It always does, I said. I'm not ready for this, he continued. My whole life just collapsed. I studied him, really studied him. The fear on his face wasn't about losing me. It was about losing control. You should be talking to your lawyer, I said. Or a therapist, not me. He swallowed. I didn't want you thinking. I don't think anything anymore, I interrupted gently. I see. That stopped him. I never meant to make you feel small, he said. You know that, right? I thought about all the nights I'd stared at my phone, wondering if wanting to be loved was asking too much. I know what you meant, I replied. That doesn't change what happened. He reached for me then. Not touching. Just close enough to test the boundary. I stepped back. Don't, I said. His hand dropped. I need to go, I added. Clara. This is the last time, I said, not raising my voice. Don't come looking for me again. He nodded, once, like he was filing it away. I walked past him without looking back. That evening, Hannah sent me a photo. It was a screenshot of an invitation. Evan Carter, solo showcase, date, time, location. It's happening next month, she wrote. I'm ready. I stared at the image for a long moment. For the first time since this all began, I felt something close to calm. Because consequences don't need permission. They just arrive. I didn't go to the showcase. That part surprises people when they hear the story later. They expect front row seats, a dramatic reveal, me standing there, watching it all burn. But this wasn't my fire anymore. Hannah sent me updates anyway. Not play-by-play, just enough. The The showcase was held in a converted warehouse downtown. White walls, polished concrete floors, soft lighting designed to make everything feel important. Evan had talked about it for months, said it was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. New investors, bigger projects, a step out of the middle and into something that looked like success. Hannah arrived early. She didn't bring friends, didn't bring drama. She dressed simply, black coat, hair pulled back, expression calm. The kind of calm that only comes after you've already grieved. Evan was already there when she walked in. According to Hannah, he froze the moment he saw her. Not because he was afraid, because he thought she was still someone he could manage. He smiled, stepped toward her, said her name like it still belonged to him. She let him finish the sentence. Then she handed him an envelope. Inside were copies, not originals. She didn't need those anymore. Printed messages, dates, screenshots, overlapping timelines highlighted in neat, merciless order. She didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse, didn't explain. She simply said, "You might want to tell them the truth before they hear it from someone else." Then she walked past him. She didn't give the papers to the crowd. Not yet. She waited. She watched him spiral. Hannah said he tried to laugh it off at first, made jokes, acted like nothing was wrong, but people noticed. They always do when someone loses their footing. He kept checking his phone, kept glancing toward the entrance, kept touching his jacket pocket like the truth might crawl out on its own. An hour in, Hannah started handing out copies. Not aggressively, not theatrically. One to a gallery owner, one to a potential investor, one to someone who asked too many questions. She didn't explain unless asked. When she was asked, she answered plainly. Yes, he was seeing me. Yes, at the same time. Yes, there's a pregnancy involved. No embellishment, no emotion. Just facts. By the time Evan realized what was happening, it was too late. He tried to pull her aside. She didn't stop walking. He tried to speak over the music. No one was listening anymore. People began to leave early, quietly, politely. The worst kind of exit. Not scandal. Assessment. Hannah sent me one last message that night. It's done. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel relief. What I felt was distance. The kind that lets you see a situation clearly without being inside it. 2 weeks later, I heard Evan had postponed the rest of the shows. A scheduling conflict, according to the polite version. According to the truth, investors had stepped back. Trust had evaporated. The questions wouldn't stop. Marissa had moved forward with everything. Lawyers, paperwork, reality. Evan tried to call me once more after that. I didn't answer. Some endings don't need a conversation. They just need space. 3 months passed. Not dramatically. Not with milestones or announcements. Just days stacking on top of each other until the story stopped feeling immediate. I changed small things first. My morning routine. The route I took to work. The cafe I used to sit in on Sundays waiting for someone who was always late. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was tired of explaining my reactions to myself without tools. What surprised me most wasn't the grief. It was how much energy I'd been spending managing someone else's comfort. In therapy, my counselor asked me a question that stuck. When did you start believing love meant shrinking? I didn't have an answer right away, but I thought about all the times I'd apologize for wanting clarity. All the nights I'd reread my own messages, wondering if they sounded too much, too needy, too visible. I hadn't been asking for too much. I'd been asking the wrong person. Through mutual friends, bits of information filtered in. Evan had moved apartments, something smaller, cheaper, closer to work. He told people it was temporary. Marissa was due in November. Evan had signed paperwork early, legal, clean, the kind of agreement that looks responsible from the outside and terrified from the inside. He didn't talk about the baby much anymore. People said he looked tired. Hannah and I never became friends. We didn't text. We didn't meet up again. We didn't need to. What we shared was situational, finite. Once the truth was exposed, there was nothing left to exchange. One afternoon, my friend Kevin set me up on a date. I almost said no out of habit, not fear, just inertia. But I said yes. We met for coffee, sat outside, talked for 3 hours without checking our phones once. He asked questions and waited for answers. He didn't flinch when I spoke plainly. When I said I needed time, he didn't turn it into distance. Afterward, he texted me first. I'd like to see you again. It felt easy. That night, I realized something quietly important. I hadn't thought about Evan all day. Not once. No anger, no satisfaction, no ache. Just absence. And absence, I learned, can be a kind of peace. People started asking questions once enough time had passed. Not loudly, not directly, the careful kind, slipped into conversation like they weren't sure they were allowed to be curious. Did he ever apologize? Did you two talk after everything came out? Do you feel like you got closure? The word followed me for a while. Closure. As if it were a package someone else could hand you once they'd said the right sentence in the right tone. The truth was simpler. Evan never gave me a real apology. There were messages I didn't open, a voicemail I deleted without listening to the end, an email that sat unread until it expired on its own. At first, I told myself I was being strong, setting boundaries, protecting my peace. Later, I realized something else. I wasn't avoiding him. I just didn't need anything from him anymore. That realization came quietly, on a random Tuesday evening. I was standing in my kitchen, cooking dinner, music playing low. I reached for my phone out of habit, then stopped. There was no reason to check it. No one I was waiting for. No silence I was trying to survive. I thought about the version of myself from 3 months earlier, the one who measured her worth by response times, who believed patience was proof of love, who thought shrinking was the price of staying. I didn't judge her. She did the best she could with the information she had, but I didn't miss her either. A mutual friend mentioned Evan once, casually, like his name still had relevance. He asked about you, she said, wondered how you were doing. I smiled politely. I'm good. And I was. Not glowing, not dramatically healed, just steady. Later that night, I realized something that felt almost embarrassing in its simplicity. Closure hadn't come from a conversation. It came from consistency, from waking up without anxiety, from not rehearsing what I'd say if I ran into him, from no longer needing him to understand what he'd done in order for me to move on. Closure, it turns out, isn't something someone gives you. It's something you stop waiting for. There's one question people ask more than any other. They lower their voices when they do it, like they're worried the answer might bruise. If he reached out now, would you ever consider it? The answer comes easily. No pause, no anger, no dramatic emphasis. Just no. Not because I hate him. Not because I want him to regret anything. But because trust isn't something you rebuild once it's been managed, rationed, and weaponized. You can't build a future on a foundation that was never honest to begin with. I learned something important in the aftermath of all this, something no one tells you while you're inside it. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't tell you to wait indefinitely. It doesn't make you feel like access to you is a privilege it can revoke. And it definitely doesn't make you question whether wanting presence means you're asking for too much. Evan made his choices. Not in one night, not in one mistake. In patterns, in silences, in half-truths, in deciding when I was allowed to exist in his life. And I made mine too. I stopped negotiating my worth. I stopped trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped waiting. That was the real ending. Not the pregnancy, not the public fallout, not the quiet embarrassment that followed him around after everything unraveled. The ending was the moment I realized I didn't need to be chosen by someone who never chose me honestly. These days, my life is unremarkable in the best way. I make plans and they happen. I say what I need and it's heard. I leave when something feels wrong, and I don't apologize for it. Sometimes I think about that night, the soft knock on my door, the bag on the counter, the way my heart stopped for all the wrong reasons, and I don't feel pain anymore. I feel clarity, because the hardest lesson wasn't learning how to let go. It was learning that letting go wasn't loss at all. It was relief.